Hello, Ben.
Hello, can you hear me?
I cannot hear you. While Ben takes a look at the sound, I am going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of AIHR Live. My name is Nelly Verlinden, and today I am speaking with Ben Whitter, also known as Mr. Employee Experience. We'll be talking about employee experience during and beyond COVID-19. So welcome, Ben.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can still not hear you. Perhaps we can try to go out and get back in once again. So we'll wait 1 second for Ben to come back. So as I said, we'll be talking about employee experience during and beyond COVID-19 with Ben, who will be joining us again in a few moments. So the idea is that for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so, Ben will talk us through the critical elements of the employee experience, and he'll also share a more holistic and human approach to doing business during and beyond COVID-19. And by the end, we'll be talking about virtual employee experience. And then we have about 10 minutes for a live Q&A with Ben. So if in the meantime you have any questions whatsoever, please share them with us in the comments so that we can answer as many of them as possible at the end of the episodes.
Ben is audible on the live stream, so it might be your computer.
And Ben is back. So that is good news. Yes, fantastic.
Great, thank you. Good.
So happy to see you again, Ben. So I basically told everybody who is watching what we'll be doing today. So I said you'll be talking us through the critical elements of employee experience and share a more human and holistic approach to doing business during and beyond COVID-19. And that by the end, we have about 10 minutes for a live Q&A with you. So I say, let's get started.
Excellent, yeah. So thank you for inviting me to take part in the talk. Is it okay if I share my screen with you?
Of course.
Yeah, let me just do that now. Just a second.
Anything happening yet?
Seems to be some gremlins in the system today, which is interesting.
Otherwise, perhaps we can already start with the first question, if that's okay with you.
Let's go to the questions. Yeah, I think that'd be good.
So I think that many of us, when we hear employee experience, we have kind of an idea what we're talking about. But I think if someone would ask us to describe what is the employee experience, that we would struggle. So perhaps we can start with a brief description of the employee experience and what the critical elements of employee experience are.
Yeah, so for me, we talk about something called the holistic employee experience, which really looks at the whole within organizations. So we're looking at how we connect to the brand's critical purpose, the mission and the values. And that's something we call the truth. Now we're finding out through COVID-19 whether that's true or not for organizations. So we're seeing lots of headlines and lots of negative news stories of companies that really aren't living their values. They're not really following what they've been saying. And I think that's reflected in the employee experience, the way people are being treated, the way people are being maybe exited from the business, and it's causing lots of problems for employees and for companies as well. So for me, employee experience is really about the holistic design of the entire organization. So every experience and interaction that creates these wonderful kind of feelings and emotions and responses that are very human. You know, we want to craft and cultivate experiences that help us from pre-hire to retire to deliver our best possible human and business outcomes. So for me, that's what employee experience is all about. And then surrounding the truth, we have all the great critical elements that we need to focus on.
And so when we look at the elements that make up the employee experience, what would you say are critical elements of it?
Yeah, so we've looked at this from a number of perspectives, looking at large organizations, looking at medium-sized companies and smaller businesses. And we found consistently all around the world, regardless of sector, regardless of size, regardless of budgets, there are some things that if you really focus your attention on and invest wisely with energy and resources, you're going to see better results, increased innovation, profitability, productivity, and higher well-being levels. So if you do that, connecting them to the most important things to your business, so the truth, your purpose, your mission, your values, we start to look at the human. One of the things I found out in my research is employee experience is not about employees at all, which for me and my brand was a nightmare, but we're dealing with it. I mentioned this in my book because it's such a, I've seen so many employee experience models out there, which humans aren't even mentioned, which is an absolute travesty. So the number one element for us is humans. So human beings, that's at the top of our model. It's about a deep commitment to human centricity and the relationship we create and cultivate with employees as co-creators and co-producers of their own experience. And again, we're seeing examples of that all around the economy now, of organizations that take that partnership seriously and organizations that unfortunately don't. And we read about it, we hear about it, and employees are increasingly protesting about it. So a next element to kind of mention is the leadership. The vast majority of touch points remain at the mercy of our leaders. So if we've got really great leaders, then it's going to be a much richer employee experience. If we're walking into a situation now where we're working from home with different resources, different aspects of our work life, and we still have micromanagement and managers that are less than human-centered, that's going to be a very difficult situation. So we need to focus on leadership. Moving around the hex, we can move on to structure. So again, how we structure our businesses is absolutely critical within the employee experience, the business model, and actually how you structure your support services. So if we talk about the holistic employee experience, there's a tendency to think about HR, but actually HR are just one team of many within the employee experience. They're very important as architects of the experience, but there are so many other functions around that. So IT, marketing, comms, and other functions besides. And then we have the great technology. This is something we're all playing with now. It's fantastic to see. Many companies have been trying to digitally transform for years, and it took this kind of crisis to really prompt action. I was talking to a CEO last week, and they're getting rid of all their physical buildings now. They've had an unexpected and positive reaction to working digitally, and that's going to be the core of their business model.
Interesting.
Really interesting innovation, I think. Yeah. And then the workplace. Workplace is no longer a building anyway. That's part of our model for holistic employee experience, is that it's the spaces and places where you can do your best work, and that's it. It doesn't have to be a building. And then the final element to mention, which is one of the biggest factors of employee experience, is community. So creating that sense of belonging and creating a place where people can be themselves, and we can connect with each other at a very human level, as we're seeing through COVID-19, and helping each other through that. So those are the 6 critical elements of the employee experience, and they surround everything that's most important to your business: the truth, your purpose, your mission, and your values.
Yeah. So I think, because you already mentioned, of course, that they surround everything that's to do with your business. So if we look at how the employee experience impacts the business, perhaps can you give us an example of how an improvement in employee experience led to better business outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many to talk about. So if you iterate or redesign a onboarding process, if you look at the way you lead employees, if you look at the way you install your values, I think there's so many examples to think about. From everything, we have companies that get their employees involved in workplace design. So designing their entire infrastructure, designing the products and tools that they actually use within the employee experience. So there's lots of examples of that. Maybe like many other people, I was really interested in the letter from the Airbnb CEO yesterday, which really documented in a very human and powerful way all the things that that particular company, which was a case study in my book, what they're actually doing to support their employees, given they're having to make 25% of them as redundancies or layoffs. So again, you expect employers to respond at that experience and that critical point and say, okay, just get rid of people, move them out, and that's it. Well, what we're seeing from employee experience organizations is that they take this very, very seriously. They want to maintain that connection. So Airbnb, as an example, they've designed great things to support people's growth and career prospects. They've given people equity in the business. Yeah. People that are leaving the organization are getting equity. Yeah. They're doing a whole host of things, increasing benefits and insurance. So they're doing absolutely everything they can to support that human experience. And that's one example from an organization that's doing multiple things at multiple levels to support their employee experience efforts.
Yeah, and so Ben, when we were talking a first time before this episode, you of course mentioned this more holistic and human approach to doing business now during COVID-19, but also beyond. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Well, for me, this is a defining point. I think this is a defining moment in the way we build our companies. And we're seeing it literally every day and every hour of the examples where companies are really taking a stand on what matters most. So they're serving the economy in a better way, they're serving their communities in a better way, and they're serving the stakeholders that are connected to the business and brand in a better way. Mm-hmm. And I think this offers some hope for the future of the economy. We're moving more away from this out and out capitalistic approach where profit was above all. Everything, to this purposeful economy, which is experience driven. So being very sensitive to the impact that we have and the contribution we make to society. Yeah. So this is what we stand for as kind of HEX practitioners and HEX organizations, in that it's not good enough to just put your values on a wall and then a crisis hits and then you just depart from them. We're finding out what really matters now, and we're finding out that on a daily basis through the employee experience. Yeah. So for me, it's fascinating in terms of creating better business outcomes, but also creating better human outcomes. Because we've seen inequalities in the system before COVID-19, which were causing a lot of chaos. We had hundreds of CEOs from corporate America and the Business Roundtable say, we need to focus on all stakeholders now across society, not just our shareholders. Yep. Now, that's a great indication of where the economy is moving to. And I think COVID-19 is the opportunity to really double down on that. And especially within great HR work, HR functions, we're seeing differentiated HR professionals now that are really more like experienced architects. They're looking around them and they're seeing all the possibilities to create a deeper connection with their employees. Yeah. So I think this is a great time to be working in HR, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that perhaps we can say that it's a time where organizations, they are going to look more at what really matters, both inside the organization but also outside their organizations in terms of doing business, right?
Yeah, definitely inside the organizations. We did some work with the economists last year, and some of the biggest issues we faced before COVID are still here. Lack of alignment, lack of accountability for the employee experience, lack of transparency within organizations. So all of these big issues, they continue. And this is why we're saying, look, we need very much a holistic approach and an approach that's based on the human experience. So getting the best out of everyone and redesigning our functions to make that happen. We see departments, whether it's employee experience or whatever you want to call it, helping the organizations navigate a collective approach to delivering a better employee experience, starting with leaders. Leaders are massively accountable. Yeah. From one organization we looked at, they installed employee experience really at the top of the organization, and they were within a year or so hitting 92% engagement rates. And
which is huge, because I believe on average it tends to be around 30%, right? Yeah. Oh, Ben, I need to pause you for a second, because I think we have a bit of an issue with the connection here, unfortunately. Can you say something again? No, it seems like...
Hello, can
Yes, and I think we're back. Well, I mean, I'm going to call this the beauty of live streaming. All these issues. We're just making the most out of it. So sorry, but the last part of what you said, I said, obviously over 90% of engagement is huge, because I believe on average, and I think this is maximum, it hits about 30%. So obviously over 90% engagement is massive. And then you were saying something in response to that.
It was something wise and very intelligent. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
No, I mean, for those types of organizations, I think when you really commit to it from a CEO level, you can transform your business really quite powerfully from top to bottom and deliver these beautiful outcomes. And we see it consistently within the work that we do in the organizations that approach us to work with them. It takes that deeper level of commitment to the human beings within your company. But the pace and acceleration of what you can achieve is really quite profound. So we're seeing the emergence and growth of employee experience roles simply because there's been triple-digit growth of employee experience roles over the last year or so. And we're seeing more chief experience officers, chief employee experience officers. Yeah. It's not the role that counts, it's the focus that counts for the entire organization.
Ben, yeah. There we go again. I think you need to tap unmute.
Am I here?
Yes, and you're back.
Lots of gremlins in the system today. I'm not sure what's going on.
If you're going to do this every time you say something wise, Ben, then I think we're just going to be on silent for But yes, okay. I'm gonna try and move on to the next question and see how that goes. Okay. This is related also to this period, of course, with so many people working from home and organizations becoming remote organizations often now. And I can see at least a part of this continuing once we start to deconfine, get out of this confinement period. So in a way, I think this is going to make the, let's call it, virtual employee experience a lot more important, because people will more often be working from home and they will have these kinds of interactions as I have with you right now. Mm-hmm. So I think, or I can imagine, organizations will have to start thinking of a virtual employee experience as well as part of their employee experience. So what would you say are important elements to think of when we talk about this virtual employee experience?
Yeah, it's a fascinating area for many reasons. And in the last week or so, I've been having conversations with CEOs and business founders of companies that started from day one as a remote worker organization. So very little reliance on any physical buildings or infrastructure. Yeah. They're remote from day one. Yeah. And the way they've approached the crisis is that it's okay, it's good. Yeah, there's not been not much too much change there, because they've integrated it within their business model and the values of the organization as well. And that dictates how you recruit people into the organization in the first place, people comfortable working virtually. Now, in this context, we don't have that luxury, because literally overnight people have been digitalized because we have no other choice but to do that. Yeah, but I think that offers many opportunities to create the spaces where people can come together, where we can share updates, where we can be more transparent and human, share challenges and frustrations, look after our mental health and well-being. So I think in that sense, nothing much has changed, in that we still need to create those types of environments virtually where people can come together and just be human. And I think that's the big thing getting through COVID-19, is that anxiety levels are going to start to creep up unless we start to, this is a medical term, but flatten the curve of anxiety. We hear a lot about flattening the curve medically, but there's going to be a rise of anxiety across the economy, which is going to need to be addressed with the employee experience. So we see CEOs doing regular talks and town halls virtually. Some don't want to go back to the physical ones because they're working so effectively. Making sure people can connect with each other. I think leadership needs to change. We need to be more sensitive to the home and work life and that integration. And the challenges that may bring as well. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be people homeschooling, and I'm homeschooling, and we're doing different things to balance that. And I think having that empathy for people who are in real human situations now, as opposed to you go to work and you switch to becoming a professional, and then you leave work and then you're a human being. It just doesn't make any sense. It never made any sense before, and it certainly doesn't make any sense now.
No, but it does come also with its own set of challenges, however, because this is, well, I agree with what you say. The risk, what we see now, of course, is that when you're working from home all the time, it's literally that you get up in the morning, you get behind your laptop or in your home office, and you actually don't get up from that seat until the evening. And so in that regard, well, that's another range of challenges, I think. Also something that's interesting, I was talking about with someone a while ago, is that some companies are now virtually onboarding people because those people have been hired and they're actually still going to start their new jobs. And those people, they are going to have this completely virtual experience from day one. So for them, it's actually going to be really interesting how the transition is going to go if one day they're actually going to be allowed back into a work environment like an office again. So,
yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And certainly the people we work with, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, they were asking the question around, how do we welcome people back to the workplace? How do we create a safe environment for them to return and feel good about the experience? Because, I think lockdown has been very successful around the world. I don't think there's any question about that. And people are actually fearful to leave their houses now.
Yeah.
So supporting them through that transition psychologically is going to be absolutely critical. Creating the right types of work environments, making sure we're safeguarding people's health and mental well-being is going to be, I think, the core of employee experience work going forward for the next few months, at least, and certainly into the long term as well.
Yeah. Ben, I've got one last question coming from my end, because thank you very much for our viewers to stick with us through these sometimes technical hiccups, because we've got lots of questions. So please, if you have any questions for Ben, keep asking them. We'll try and answer as many of them as possible. This is the last one that's going to come from me. And that's one about what elements or what parts of the employee experience do you feel are often forgotten about or overlooked by organizations? So,
that's a great question. Yeah. What is most overlooked? I think, we can look at technology as an investment, and technology is very good. And there's lots of wise investments and practical investments that improve the employee experience. And I suppose sometimes that's where practitioners and professionals go to first. They look at the technology that they need, and they look at any IT or infrastructure or equipment that employees need. But I think that
I think we should be back on, Ben. I think we should be back on.
Am I here?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good.
Well, this is definitely a true live session, isn't it? So I'm sorry, you were talking about technology.
We just need the kids running around in the background now, and that'll be complete. It'll be like. So technology is obviously critical, as we're demonstrating here, to get that right.
Yes.
But the biggest thing is, we can laugh about this because we're being human about it. You could have people in situations where, like, this is the biggest, terrible thing ever. I was on a call with colleagues in Asia last week, and we had the kids running around in the background, and my colleague was like, he was getting quite nervous about it, but we were like, forget about it. This is life now.
Yeah.
Actually, you just got to kind of roll with it in terms of this is what the human experience is all about, dealing with challenges, dealing with things that don't go our way sometimes, but actually helping people through all these different experiences and employee journeys that they have. Yeah. So I still think the biggest thing in business is learning to really focus on that human element. All the evidence and research we've seen over the last many decades all stacks up to say, if you treat people as human beings, if you support them in the best possible way that you can, you're going to get better results from them. Therefore, your business is going to be stronger. So I still think the most underrated element of the employee experience is is this mindset shift from profit and numbers and processes to humans' experience and emotions. I think that's the biggest thing. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and we can often lead it through experience. A lot of CEOs are going to be challenged now around. They're going to see their employees stand up and say, "Look, we're still here. We're still fighting. We're still, working really hard for your business," and they'll be reflecting on this, saying, "Actually, they've saved our businesses in a lot of contexts."
Yeah.
So this is going to change the nature of the way businesses are led, I think, or it should do. There are some that are not going to survive this crisis because of the way they treat people, and that's probably a very good thing.
Yeah, in a way, I think it is. So, Ben, we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to get to it right away. I hope you are ready.
I'm ready. Go.
So, the first question is, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, from Mark Voy. And the question is, how does personalization fit in this equation of employee experience?
Oh, it absolutely fits. And, to such an extent that we want to get to as much personalization as we possibly can. I think that's when we really unlock the potential of the human experience. When we're talking directly to certain audiences within our business, when we're going down to a level where we really understand our employees and their needs and their wants and their desires. There's some great organizational work here where people are really starting to get to know each other. Even before COVID-19, it was using technology to create a better and more personalized onboarding experience, helping people pre-register the big issues or the big wants or the big needs to help them become productive and strong within the company. Even before day one, people were lining those things up. So I think at every touch point within the employee experience, I think the question is, how can we personalize this in a deeper way? And I think the second thing that reinforces that is, how do we personalize in a way that connects people more closely to our truth? So our purpose, our mission, our values.
Yeah.
So if your value is one thing, how can you, again, personalize that? We've seen organizations like Brewdog in the UK, where one of their values is be a force for good in the world. Now, it's all well and good putting that as a value, but how do you live that value?
Yeah.
And the way they do it is very personalized. And, they've been making hand sanitizer through this crisis. And it's a tremendous example. They've pivoted parts of their business to really personalize around the current challenge we face as human beings. And they want to be a force for good in the world. And,
they're acting like it.
Yeah, and they create those types of experiences where their employees can get directly involved in creating a better planet and society. So this is the type of personalization we want to see more of. And I think technology is a great enabler to make that happen.
All right, thank you. We're on to the next question that I think is a good one as well. It's from Aditi Sharma. And the question is, how do you ensure a pleasant EX at a time when many companies have to lay off their employees?
Yeah, so is this dealing with survivors or people who are not being laid off, do you think?
I think, well, I mean, we can say that maybe it is about, still having exactly, for the survivors. Yes, let's call it like that.
So for me, we talk about a great, I don't use the word exit experience because no one really leaves a business. No one ever leaves a business. That's a complete myth. Contractually, I think people will leave. But actually what happens is that connection stays for life. So if I'm speaking to a colleague or interviewing a colleague for a book or research, I ask them very quickly, what's the best experience they've had within a company, within their career? And immediately they come back and make the connection and they tell me everything that was really bad or really good about a brand that they've worked for.
Yeah.
And you can see it. Just ask, I'd encourage your audience to ask their friends and family this question. What's the best experience you've ever had in your career? And then you get a big list of things and observations that says, okay, this is where we need to focus. And they're all very, very human. So that's one thing in terms of employees are going to be watching how you treat people on the way out. So I gave the example from Airbnb, and there was a hotel that did a very similar thing. And there's lots of other companies besides doing great things in the way that they treat people. Yeah. Throwing people together on a Zoom call, hundreds of people on a Zoom call and terminating them on the spot without any advance warning is not a good way to treat people.
Yeah.
Now, that's a real example. How do you do that in a better way? Well, have a look at some of the companies that are getting it right, putting in place the right package. Because I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing I would focus on.
I think if we have to put a name on that, then we can say that it's very important to ensure I'm going to say human again, offboarding then, right? You don't like the term exit. So perhaps it's about that, how you treat people when you say goodbye to them.
Yeah, exactly. And you never say goodbye to them. I think great brands, they keep people with them. That's just a fact. So you just transition them into the alumni community, and that connection is maintained, and you retain all that great positive advocacy and positive goodwill.
Yeah.
If you treat them poorly, then it's a completely different story, and perhaps you'll end up in the newspapers.
Another good way. Let's move on to the next question. All right, I've got a question here coming from Fred Kloet, and the question is, what could we do to improve EX at home? So it's a relevant question, I think, on which we touched already a little bit, but perhaps you've got something to add.
It's a very good one, yeah. Maybe we set up a new business, consulting for X at home. It's a fascinating space, isn't it? Because we're all human and we're all dealing with the same circumstances now. I think for the home life, I think the big thing is creating the right type of, actually, if you go around the hex, you can look at what you need. What's the right structure for your days? Managing responsibilities with family and homeschooling and things that are going to be with us for a little bit longer. But then also looking at the technology you have, making sure you're using the right technology to enable a great experience. Being really careful around the platforms you use and getting some maybe synergies within your company.
Think about what probably as well that we mentioned before, mental well-being especially.
Yeah, exactly. So balancing that, and I suppose it's different for employees who are being led or still required to go through performance management systems, because the absolute opposite of this is putting in place measures that monitor and control people. Yes. I think that's exactly the approach that you don't want to do. And again, we've seen examples of that from the banking sector, where people open up their laptops and they're clicking and logging on every kind of keyboard button you press. So that's not good. So we want to do the opposite of that. We want to give people freedom to explore and create the right type of working conditions for themselves. And actually, what I would say is, make sure you're assessing the employee experience. So we have our own analytics platform, and we kind of survey just to make sure that everything is serving people in the best possible way. And if there are improvements to be made, then corporately and centrally we can do that. If there's more education required on how to manage time, how to manage yourself, how to kind of break up your day and make the most of things, and that's great education too. So again, assessing the employee experience, getting the data, and then taking action. These are wonderful things that you can do right now, I think.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, we haven't touched on that, but of course, it's important to assess the employee experience and see what data you get, and then, of course, take action based on that data. Fantastic answer, I would say. So,
great.
You're on to the next round. So, all right, so I've got another question here coming from Michael Assad. And the question is, how do we engage virtually our people while we are pushing them to work more and focus more as much as we can? This is similar to the previous question, but perhaps you can say one or two things about it.
I think the first thing is we have to take the pressure off a little bit during this time frame. I think that's the big thing. So it's making the space as a leader to have the human conversations first rather than last.
Yeah.
So leaders often lead with, okay, how's performance going? How's productivity? Are you hitting your numbers? Are we meeting our targets? Are we delivering this? Are we delivering that? What I would do, just as one thing, is just move that to one side and start your conversations and dialogue with employees and workers in a way that is more empathetic. So having real conversations with them around, how are you? How are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to make it a better experience for you? Are there things we can do together to make it a better experience for the company? Yeah. And then move into some of the stuff that you want to talk about around objectives. I think that's one massive thing that any leader can do to make it a more positive employee experience. Yeah. The second thing I would say is just listen deeply. at a level you've never listened before. Ask open questions, let people vent, let them share, share their frustrations, because that's where you're going to get intelligence around where you need to improve and fix and progress things. And then you can advance things as well. So, and if you can't advance things, you can explain very, very clearly why not, because employees are waiting for that information. And if they're not seeing actions, then they're going to be blaming you.
Yeah. Great answer. Thanks. Next question.
Positive recognition is a big thing as well. This is wonderful. You are skilled at this.
Thank you. All right, let me see, because there is a lot of questions still. So the next one. All right, yeah. Okay, here we go then. So this question is coming from Hashil Al-Hatmi, and the question is, how can we best improve HR technology and provide applications and products that will help employees engage better virtually through strong and good user experience? So this is more about the technology, the good technology that we need, as we've seen. But yeah.
Yeah, so again, for me, I come back to the overarching thing, which is the technology is there to serve our people.
Yeah.
I think if that's your frame of reference, then I think that will automatically create better decisions, because we're co-creating the solutions with our staff. So not only are we listening to them, we're also co-producing the right type of solution. We had a chief people officer we worked with, and they held they did the planning and the work on what was going to be going into the organization from a technology standpoint. They took it to an employee forum, and employees didn't want it. They were never going to use it, and it was a very difficult process. So when we came in, we said, actually, you need to flip it around. We need to go to our audience first, understand their absolute needs, understand what technology is available within the market, and how that fits within our brand purpose, our mission, and our values. And I would go a little bit further than this if we're talking about the HEX, because I would look at the organizations that you're commissioning, at the vendors you're bringing in. Have a look at the way they're set up around their purpose, their mission, their values. Have a look at the way they're adding value to your important business mission, but also the way that they design things effectively for human consumption. Because some, you commission some, and sometimes it turns into be a little bit of a nightmare, because employees don't want the software, and management are stuck with a large bill. So I would be a little bit more cautious, but also optimistic around the level of the quality collaboration that you can have with vendors now, because certainly the best employee experience leaders we work with, they create more like an employee experience ecosystem, where that's we're taking some bold risks around the type of vendors we work with, because they've got some really smart technology which really fits in with our business model, rather than going to some big standard thing that everyone else uses just because they've got some nice brand names attached to it. So I would be a little bit more cautious and wise in those technology decisions.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have time for a few more, and then we have to wrap up this episode, I'm afraid. So I'm gonna give you a next question, Ben. So I have a question here from Linda Sukanil. How would you advise organizations with internship programs requiring a field experience, i.e. property development, on managing EX for lower level employees?
Yeah, again, a great question within employee experience, because we've got a lot of apprentices and graduates and people who are new to business and new to the business world coming into the organization. I think the big thing on this is mentoring. I built a long time ago, or a few years ago at least, an apprenticeship scheme, which within 2 years became the best in the UK. And all I did within that was I increased mentoring. So we increased responsibilities around, making sure people are supported, making sure they're being challenged in the right way, and making sure, particularly in this time, that they're secure within the environments that they're going to work in. So if you're talking about the building sector, again, we need to be cautious of the regulations and the government situation within those types of sectors. But I still think there's an opportunity to, educate people, to mentor them, to grow their skills, to grow their confidence, grow their knowledge and skills. potentially working in different parts of the business as well. So I would look at the holistic experience for that particular person, and what kind of experience can we create that really resonates with that person and gets them to a place where they're developing in a very good way.
Yeah, thank you. So Ben, I think this is going to be the last one. So the last question comes from Owusu and is, who owns the employee experience in an organization?
I do. It's copyright. Look, it's copyright. It belongs to. I'm joking. This is a great question, and it comes back to some of the research we've done around alignment and accountability. Who actually owns the employee experience? Because there's some thinking out there that it's HR's responsibility. There's some thinking out there that it's corporate marketing or internal communications. And the truth is closer to the point that it's a shared responsibility across the organization. And that's very easy to say, yeah, everything's a shared responsibility. And I get that criticism, but this is really true. The best organizations that we've seen very much install employee experience in a very methodical and structured way. So it's a case of, if you can't structure in a senior leader with an experience mandate at the top of the organization, then how can we facilitate that across the middle and maybe into the senior sponsorship level? So bringing down those sponsors to back our projects with money, finance, and advocacy is going to be critical. So some organizations create a coalition of experience, others will create an employee experience department, but employee experience is still not owned by employee experience departments. It's very much about, how do we facilitate all these internal functions and leaders who are used to working in these specialized and narrow focuses. So again, a big part of what we do on the HEX Practitioner is create more of a movement around this. So getting the mandate right, the operating model, making sure we're using evidence to persuade and increase our mandate and outcomes. Make sure we're getting the right team in there. Employee experience teams and organizations, they have entrepreneurs, they have people from commercial backgrounds, marketing, IT, digital, psychologists, occupational therapists, all working together within the employee experience. Again, a great example to finish on is, we have one organization as a case study in my next publication, and they don't have any HR team, which is really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So they take the holistic view that all support functions are designed to be in the service of their workforce. So if you're an employee and you're looking around, you're seeing everyone lined up to support you and your needs. And your needs will deliver great outcomes for your business if we're meeting them in the best possible way. So yeah, I would look at your context, your situation, your circumstances, but there's so many opportunities to create a really strong experience-led organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be roles and all these kind of fancy charts and organizational charts. It could be the philosophy that runs deep within the business from top to bottom. Great people can make bad systems work. But the secret to employee experience success is getting the system and the people working in harmony together to create beautiful outcomes.
And I think that's also a beautiful end to our episode, Ben. So unfortunately, it's time for me to say goodbye to you. I want to thank you once again very much for being here with us today for this AIHR Live episode, Ben. Thank you also very much for sharing your experience and for the laughter. And I hope to speak soon again. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to this episode of AIHR Live. Apologies for the few technical hiccups that we had, but hey, that's what can happen when it's a live stream. If you thought the topics that Ben and I discussed were interesting, then you might want to take a look at our Employee Experience and Design Thinking course. That one is available in the AIHR Academy. And it's also part of our full academy license, which means that you get access to 15 other courses and 4 certificate programs. And Ben is teaching it. So you can find all the information that you need in case you're interested on our website, aihr.com. That was it as well for me. I'm going to thank you again very much if you stuck with us till the end of this episode. And I hope to see you again soon for a new episode of AIHR Live. Thank you and goodbye.